Hi, my name is Aritz Martin and I have made the 2D UFO tutorial. That's one I'm going to explain right now. This is the game working. You have a 2D UFO that is the player, and you can move it all around to pick all the objects, and the amount of points grow, and if you get all of them, you win the game. As it's an 2D game, we only have the top view, and I have to explain something about the Unity. This is the game scene where you have all the game objects that are inside the game. Here we have the project folders, and here we have the game view. That is what the camera sees, and when you press play, you see all this. And to start, I have to speak about the background. The background is an object I have added, and as it says sprite, it has to have a sprite renderer component. Here, each game object has some components that make the behavior of that object, and this is a sprite, so it has a sprite renderer to render this sprite, and it has a transform. All of them have a transform to position them in the scene. The transform has three different properties. The position, we can change the position like this, or writing any number. The rotation, to change the rotation of the object, and the scale. So in the sprite renderer, there's a property called sorting layer, and this is important for a 2D game because if we go here, so we see we have three different layers: the background, the pickups, and the player. These sorting layers define what thing we see first from the camera. So if we put the player here, the background is first than the player, so we don't see the player. That's why we have to keep the player here. And also the pickups, if they are there, we don't see them. They have to be here. So this is the sprite renderer. Now to add some functionality to our game, we have added in the background the box colliders. The box colliders are components that allow us our game objects to collide against another game object. We have added box 2D colliders to the background. We can edit them here, and as you can see, the walls are fitting the box collider. We can edit them to fit the walls. Why do we do this? Because we don't want the player to go through the walls. So if there's a box collider, the player can hit the walls and don't pass through. Now if we go to the player, we have a circle collider 2D that is the same as the other collider, but in a circle shape. We can also edit it. And we need also the player to move. So we have added a rigid body 2D to be affected by physics. In this component, one important thing is the gravity scale. That is the gravity that affects the player. In this game, it's set to 0 because it's a 2D game and we don't want the player to fall down here. So we put 0 in the gravity. And we just don't need to change nothing more here. How can we make the player move and all this stuff? Okay, we have to add a new component called a script. That it's a script that we can program in C#. We can add components here, like here for example, new script, write the script, and we add it. Then we have created a folder in the script, a script folder, and inside it we have the player controller that it's attached to the player. Here we can see a preview. If we open it, in our editor, it's the mono develop editor, we can see all the code that the player has. We have to go down here. This is the code that makes the player move. We use this fixed update because we have also the normal update, but the fixed update is for the physics code, and we are trying to make the player move. So the physics code, we have these two lines. So we create a float to receive the input of the horizontal axis of our game, and also the vertical axis. So if we press, the custom buttons are W, A, D and S. We press W, the horizontal value will change, and if we press other buttons they will change. So now that we have the float value of our inputs, we save them in a movement variable that is vector 2D, the horizontal and the vertical value of our movement. And what we make is take the rigid body, take it in the start, and add a force to that rigid body so that the player can move. We use the movement we have received here, and we also multiply it by the speed we want. If we can see, here is a public float speed. So if you put public here in a variable, you can see it in the inspector. As you can see, the speed is here in the inspector. So here you can change the speed, typing or whatever you want. So now our player will move with a speed of 10 when we press the input buttons. Now I want to focus in the main camera. What we want from main camera is to follow the player, like in the game. If we move the player, the camera moves with it. There are a lot of ways to do it. In the tutorial they explain that you can have the main camera as a child of the player, but it will rotate with the player. So it's a big problem because the camera will go like crazy. So to make this, we made a script like camera controller. If we go there, we can see in the start we use a vector to get the distance between the position of the camera and the position of the player. Later we use it in the late update. This is the last, after all the other updates are made, all the physics, all the other updates, this is executed. So we use the modifier, like we set the position of the camera to the player position plus the modifier, the distance between the position of the camera and the position of the player. So it will follow all the time the player's position. Now for the pickups, we can see that we have these two game object, pickups and a pickup. Pickups is like a game object that contains all the pickups, and the pickup, it's the objects we can take. They have a circle collider, so when the player hits this collider, we can make something. It's set to trigger because what we want is to trigger some action when it happens, and not to use the physics. That's why we use the trigger. So when we go through, this disappears and the counter goes up. So what we can learn from this is also to make prefabs. Here we have the pickup prefab. We can make a custom game object at different components and then drag it, and we make a prefab. Now that we have this game object prefab, we can put a lot of them in the game and they keep their behavior. For the pickups, we have make like a little animation, like rotating, by adding this script, the rotator script, to the pickup game object. What we do is rotate the game object during the update, and we rotate it like 40 degrees in the set axis. And to make it smoother, we multiply it by time delta time, that is the current game time. Now, for the player to be able to pick up these items, we have set this function on trigger entity. This function triggers every time our player enters to the collider that is triggered. What we do is, if the collider that has collided with the player has the tag pickup, so we can set the tags here. Tag pickup, we can set here the tag of any game object. So if the tag is pickup, we set it active false to make it invisible, and we pick it. Now, for showing the score, we can add here like UI text, and it creates a canvas. The canvas is a custom component of Unity that has inside all the UI of the game. So we have here two texts, different texts. This to count the points, and this for when you win, you get this text. How does this work? Here we can set the answers to position the text in the screen. So here, if we see, we can put it left, we can put it in the center, and then we can also change the width, the height. And here in the text game object, we have a text script that here we can put the text, we can change the font style, the font size, and here we can change the color. You can see that we have changed the color to yellow, and that's all. And how can we access this to change the values? Well, in player script we have added some functions that can help us doing that. First, we make two public text variables so that they can appear here, and we simply drag counter text here and win text here, so we have the reference to them. Now that we have the reference, we have created a function set count text that simply puts count plus the variable of points to strings. We have here the variable of points in count, where we store all the points. At first we set it to 0, we set the count text, and the win text we made it like empty because we don't need it yet. So when we hit a pickup, we deactivate it, we summarize the count to have to summarize 1 point more, and then we set the count text. Count text, for example, if is the first pickup, it's gonna be 1, and then the count will so count 1. And then if we get all of them that are 8, we make win text is equal to you win. So we can show this message that like you have win the game. And that's how it works. Now we can try it again. When you take the pickup, it deactivates and the count goes up. And when you take them all, you win. And that's all for this tutorial.